Okay. Alrighty. Dum-bum-bum. All right. Welcome, folks, to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zohar and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We welcome today, as we welcome every day, John from North Carolina. Shalom. Sean is with us. Welcome, Sean, from wherever it is. Thank you for joining. Tim is in Texas with us. Boker Tov. Vida and Liba. Boker Tov. And a Tanya-rific day in New York. Carlos is with us in Costa Rica. Welcome. Zara in Malaysia. Joseph all the way from New Jersey, where it's raining. Okay. Daphne, rather, in South Carolina. A terrific Tuesday. DJ, Terrence, all the way in Melbourne, Australia, welcome. While Simcha is in Florida. We have with us Vaclav in the Czech Republic. Rena is with us in Colorado. Santos is in, not certain, welcome. Lynn in Long Island. We have with us Batya, Vilma, David, Marcy, Deborah, Eitan, Gela, Rav Uri. Beautiful. Welcome. And we have on Instagram, we have Yenta Telebenta, we have Elka in Amsterdam, we have Rachel in South Carolina, we have Crystal in Australia with us. We have Okoye in Peru. All right, from all over the world, thank you all. Deborah in Kitchener, a fellow Canadian, another fellow Canadian, Eugenia in Calgary, welcome. Santos is in Brazil. Celeste Chava is in Boulder, Colorado. Beautiful. Okay. Folks, we continue in the 26th letter. This letter is quoting the Zohar in a difficult understanding of the Zohar that will get clarified today. The question at hand is as follows. From a cursory reading of the Zohar, it sounds as if only mystical Kabbalistic teachings are an expression of the tree of life, whereas the other areas of the Torah that deal with in Jewish law or in Talmudic reasoning that seem to suggest that they are an expression of the tree of knowledge in good and evil, which is, of course, an admixture of good and evil, which is klipas noiga. How could that be? Torah is, God's Torah, of course. It's got to be the tree of life and not a mixture of anything else but godliness. life itself. And we went through various arguments in the previous couple of classes to bring out the point that, of course, it's got to be the tree of life. In today's class, the Alter Rebbe is going to actually take the teachings of the Zohar and to show that in the very words, when you're more precise about the terminology, you see that it's clearly as indicated. Let's get into it. So says the Alter Rebbe, and in truth, if you examine closely the above quoted Zohar that is in from Raya Mehemna, where it says that the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is prohibition and permission, it doesn't say Toiras Isser V'Heter or Hilchas Isser V'Heter. It doesn't say that the teachings, right, and what you're studying is a prohibition and permission, or that the laws of prohibition and permission are an expression of the tree of knowledge and good and evil. But rather, what it means is that the actual subject, that not the subject, but the actual item that it's in discussion of is an expression of either being prohibited or permitted, that is an expression of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, meaning that it's klipas noiga. Now, and here it explains, what does that mean? What distinction does that mean in Jewish law? Well, we have in Hebrew the word mutar, which means permitted. What makes something permitted? So the word mutar means that it's unbound, that it's not caught up. Caught up in what? The natural state of everything in this world. And what's the natural state of this world? Klipa, shell, covering over, siter acher, the negative side. So it's not at all bound up to the forces of negativity, right? Which is the nature of this world. And therefore it's permitted. That's what makes it permitted. What does it mean that therefore it's permitted, that it's not bound up? Means it can ascend to the divine. So for example, when we're speaking about something that's permitted food-wise, right, that means you can eat it, bearing in mind when you eat it, that you're eating it to connect to God through it. How do you connect to God through food? Well, if you're using the food as an energy force to give you strength, so you could do a mitzvah like studying Torah right now. I ate something before. And sometimes when I don't eat before, I actually, I feel that my mind is not as, doesn't have the energy it needs at times, and I need to eat something. So I have the energy that I could learn, teach, pray, or whatever mitzvah that I'm engaged in, right? And even if a person doesn't have a specific intent that the food that they're eating is in order to elevate it so you can connect to God, but even if that's the food that's permitted food, you actually, in fact, after that, eating, you do a mitzvah, you're studying Tanya as we're doing now, or whatever mitzvah that you would engage in, that it gave you strength that you could do that mitzvah, that the energy that you derive from that is elevated. It ascends. Why? Because it permitted, mutar, means it's not bound to extraneous forces, to negative forces. So that therefore the letters of Torah and prayer will help it to ascend, taking the food with it, the energy of the food with it. Right? In other words, the life force of that food that is of klipa, right? Klipas noiga, admixture of good and evil, which is an expression of the tree of knowledge in good and evil, now gets elevated. Now that's during the weekday, where you need to use it, mindfully, or at least the energy thereof, in order to have it ascend. But on Shabbos, Klipas Noiga is elevated. Again, the admixture of good and evil, it's elevated with the external aspects of the world. It's all elevated. It's called Aliyas Ha'olamas, the elevation of the worlds. And therefore, on Shabbos, it becomes a mitzvah to eat all kinds of pleasurable things that are, of course, permissible for the sake of Shabbos, to enjoy Where in the weekday, if you would just do it to have pleasure, in other words, you're eating only for your own pleasure, then you're debasing the food. You're not elevating the food, even though it's permitted food. You're not permitted means you have the opportunity to elevate it, to have it ascend. But if you just eating for your own pleasure, so it's not ascending to anything godly, because it's all self-directed. On Shabbos, though, if it's pleasure for the pleasure of Shabbos, that itself elevates it. Even if you're not eating it to give you strength, that you could pray more and learn more and do more good on Shabbos. Right? So therefore we partake in meat and wine on such a day, and we partake, and for those who know Shabbos, we partake probably a lot more than we do during the week. Whereas during the week, we might be called glutton and a drunkard if we had that much. On Shabbos, it's elevated because you're having the pleasure of Shabbos through it. So because it's permissible, it is elevated. So those are the things that are what we call mutar, that are permitted. They get an elevation during the week and on Shabbos, as we just explained. Now, how about forbidden things? In Hebrew, that's called asur. Guess what asur means? Bound up. Bound up to what? The extraneous forces of the world. Because what is the natural state of this world? Klipa, a negative force, not a positive, not godliness. We don't see, unless you're working on yourself, you don't see all good and all beauty around you. Usually, you don't usually see that. Unless, again, you've worked on yourself. That's a different thing. But the natural state of the world, as we perceive it, is klipa, negative force. So therefore, the natural state of things, meaning that they are forbidden. What does it mean, forbidden? That they're bound up to extraneous force. And because they're bound up to extraneous force, that's why I cannot partake in it. I can't elevate it. Something that's permitted means I can elevate it, but that depends on me and my mindset, or my, am I just using for my own pleasure? So I'm debasing it. If I'm using it in a way to serve God, so then I'm elevating it. But then there are things, foods, right, that are not kosher. What does it mean it's not kosher? It means it's not permitted. It's forbidden. What does it mean it's forbidden? It means, what does that concept mean? It means it's a food that the power in it is bound to extraneous forces and cannot be uplifted, cannot ascend, cannot be elevated. Unless, of course, it's, your life is in danger, and therefore our sages permit such food that it would be permissible, right? So when the Zohar is speaking about that the prohibited and not prohibited, the prohibited and the permissible and the like, that it is an expression of the tree of knowledge and good and evil, what's it speaking about? The food itself. The food itself. The object itself. Not the study of the object. But when it comes to the study of Torah about that object, right? About that thing, whether it's permitted or it's prohibited, whether it's asur or mutar, pure or impure, right? The law concerning it, not the object itself, right? So that subject that's being taught in the Mishnah, in the Brises, in the Gemara, right? All of the Talmud and all of the codifiers that came after the Talmud was completed, which, by the way, is in 5th century, the end of the 5th century. And all the codifiers that came thereafter till this very day, they will come to clarify those teachings. They constitute what we call the oral Torah, right? Not the written word, the oral Torah. And the oral Torah is an expression of divine. Divine what? The level of Malchus of Atzilus. Malchus of Atzilus, right? Why is it an expression of Malchus, the oral Torah specifically? Because Malchus is royalty, the king. How does a king rule? with his word. So this is not the written word, but the oral word of the mouth, right? Originally, it was something that was only expressed orally until it was written down for sake of posterity, that we shouldn't lose its teachings, first in the Mishnah, and then Raisa, then Gemara, and so on and so forth. However, it is an expression of Malchus Vatzilus. Now, Malchus Vatzilus, right? The world of Atzilus, the world of emanation, not the world of creation, but the world of emanation, is that he and his causations, he and his light and his vessels are one. Meaning, the light and the vessel that are the expression of Malchus, royalty of Atzilus, are one with God. Meaning that the teachings of the oral tradition, the oral Torah, right? Not the written word we're speaking about here. The oral Torah are one with the Ein Sof, just as everything that the vessels and the lights of the divine attributes in Atzilus are one with God with the Ein Sof. That means that the oral Torah cannot be a composite or compound of good and evil. Good and evil is not one with God. Only pure good is one with God. What's pure good? The divine attributes. That the oral Torah is an expression of Malchus, of Atzilus. It is one with God in a perfect, simplistic whole oneness. And therefore, the oral Torah, meaning the teachings, permitted, not permitted, pure, impure, valid, invalid, and so on, are an expression of the tree of life. That's today's class. Powerful. Powerful, powerful. Any questions? A reminder that it would be best when you ask questions after the class is finished, because often we will deal with the topic. Okay, and all extraneous discussion, devils and so on, even if someone brings it up, don't respond to it. Right? Because that's taking away from the teachings. It's taking away. So if we're watching the comments, then we're not going to hear the class well. Now, of course, I have someone who's helping me out over here to be on top of things. So thank you for that. But otherwise, for everybody else, don't watch the comments, right? Joseph, what is the force behind evil? God's holiness. Contraction, such a powerful contraction on God's holiness, on God's light, that it contracts. And it, as we explained at length in the previous letter 25, right, that contraction, that nations of the world, they have the patron angel, they recognize their source, but they're not nullified to their source, right? And that's the source of evil, because now there's a sense of I am, I exist, I'm the center of the world, right? Thank you, Joseph. So that's the source of it. And reiterating something that we've said many times, and because of the duality of the world, so often we sense duality, and therefore, we can have an idolatrous mindset in that duality, that, all the good stuff comes from God and all the negative things comes from Satan. No, it all comes from God, only from God. And even though there is a concept of Satan, but Satan is the messenger of God. Okay? Lori, would evil exist without humans? Excellent question, Lori. By the way, missing you in TRC. It depends how you define evil. If you define evil in human terms, so then no, right? Then it wouldn't be, right? Because only humans have a choice between right and wrong, good and evil. But the way the Alter Rebbe explains evil, it means that which is not obviously connected to God. Meaning its life force is coming from klipa. So an animal gets its life force from klipa. Vegetation gets its life force from klipa. Therefore, since it is covering over on the obvious connection that it has to God, as opposed to a Torah scroll, as opposed to the study of Torah that we're doing now, we're getting our vitality direct from Kedusha, from holiness. Unless where you're learning this to abuse it. There's some people from other faiths try to do that. They're abusing it. So it becomes actually evil. They're the teachings when they do that. Trying to prove their faith through Torah. But, that was a parenthetical comment. Some people do that over here. But so evil, if it means that the vital force is coming from klipa, which vast majority of everything in this world is, and then that's called evil. So it's a different, it depends what you mean. When it comes to freedom of choice, so yes, it's only a human can choose evil in that respect. but there's evil just by the nature of the way God creates the world, since the sin of Adam and Eve, that they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and therefore created a world that everything has a mixture of goodness, also has evil in it, and all evil has some good in it. Everything's mixed together. That is the nature of the world that we live in right now. So in that respect, it's not humans, although humans brought it upon us, but yes. When Mashiach comes, asked Davida, will all things be permitted since there were no evil in the world? Very good. Good question. So, no, not all things will all be things be permitted. You mean, can I think negative about a loved one when Mashiach comes? Right? Can I say negativity? Can I be unkind to somebody when Mashiach comes? No. So what it means Mashiach comes is that the presence of God will be so palpable. Whereas right now the presence of me is so palpable. The presence of what I need is so palpable. My needs are palpable. My reality is a reality that's so palpable. Mashiach means that the reality of God is palpable. Well, the reality of God's palpable, so of course I'm going to not think negative. Of course I'm not going to do things that are wrong. So in that wrong, there's things that will also be not kosher. Okay, excellent question. Thank you. Rachel has a question. Was evil created on the sixth day? Was this why the sixth day was called very good? Yes, very good. Yeah. Was the first vessel of evil our Zohar? No, not the first. I mean, it's in spiritual terms above. So, Rachel, good question. So God created on the sixth day man, And after he creates him, he says it was very good. Everything else was good. And the sixth day, when he creates man, it says very good. Says our sages in the Talmud. Why is it very good? What's very good? Because he created the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination of man. How's that very good? Isn't that what takes us away from God? That takes us away from God, but then gives us the opportunity to now we could work to serve God. An angel doesn't serve God by working on it because it's an obvious reality, God, to them. For us, God's not obvious. What's obvious? Me, my needs, my reality. That's obvious. But that the reality is a reality of God, and therefore his needs are primary, or even more so, the only reality. That's a lot of work. That's TRC stuff. Great stuff. Oh. Clem, when Mashiach has arrived, will there be still divorces and marriages breakdown? I hope not. Shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. On Shabbos, John is asking, all of the divine energy in the universe return to Hashem. Is this the flow that lifts Klipas Noiga on that day? And is this the reflective time Mashiach? Beautiful question, John. Yeah, that's why it says Shabbos is a sampling of the days of Mashiach. Me'enai Lamhaba, we call it. It's a sampling of the days of Mashiach, is Shabbos. So, yes, Shabbos, the world is elevated, right? The world is elevated. We are literally different people on Shabbos. Because the divine energy is returned to its source. Exactly. And others Klipas Noiga is elevated. That's why, therefore, on Shabbos, you can eat heartily in a way that during the week would be a little over too much. And you're doing it for the pleasure of Shabbos, it becomes a mitzvah because the world is elevated. Exactly. Okay, beautiful. All right, folks, I gotta run. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Zohar in Montreal, Canada. It's really a privilege and a pleasure to share with you, Tanya. Thank you for being a part of this amazing daily uplifting, meaningful, purposeful engagement, godly, that I hope gives you energy for the entire day, that your day is a very different day. And this is just the beginning. Again, I invite you to TRC. There'll be one this Thursday at 4:30 p.m. that you can come and join. If you want more information, go to TanyaRabbi.com. If you want to private message me, do about it. If you want to try it out, by all means, let's talk about that. Absolutely. Most importantly, have a great day. Thank you for joining.